every conversation you have with an investor is kind of a test. Sometimes I'll throw something out just to see if a founder has high conviction on their idea. The founder events that I go to now look very different than they did a few years ago. I think we have kind of segmented out into niches upon niches upon niches. I think it's gotten really easy to sit behind a computer and say that you're a founder.
Abby, thank you so much for joining Venture Grounds. It's awesome to have you.
Thank you for having me. And in the neighborhood, I got to walk here from home.
Amazing. Wow. And you get to walk back.
And I get to walk home.
Well, would love to just learn about you, Outlander, what your focuses are. Just tell us about the firm.
Awesome. Well, so I'm Abby. I'm one of the junior partners at Outlander, small but mighty team of 8. We're a generalist pre-seed firm actively deploying out of $100 million Fund 3. So average check kind of sits around 1.5 million, 15% ownership, really focused on leading at the pre-seed round. So pre-product, pre-revenue, no problem. We love idea stage. And we've got a pretty impressive track record of identifying unique founders and with 18 unicorns to date.
Name drop a few.
Scale AI is probably our biggest darling given this summer's recent transaction with Meta. But everything from Gusto, Postmates, Lyft, the list goes on and on.
Amazing. Well, I know y'all deploy a 20-point founder framework when it comes to sort of diligencing the folks that you invest in. Tell us more about that, because clearly it's working if you're finding so many unicorns.
Yeah, well, I think the history of the firm is important. So Outlander started from a pretty prolific angel investor, Paige Craig. He started his career as a Marine and got recruited into the intelligence community. Through that, he, when he exited his previous company, he moved to Venice Beach and really wanted to invest in founders at the early stage, recognizing you get the best returns when you go early. And he had a unique ability to underwrite people, given his experience in the intelligence community. So he developed this founder framework, really looking at this human-centered factor analysis of identifying who are the people who are going to build the next generation of companies. So we look at kind of 4 main categories around vision, intelligence, character, and execution. And our due diligence process is really centered around understanding the founding team and how they benchmark to that set of criteria.
That's awesome. Are there any, of the 20 points, are there any that, really stand out as the consistent, most important qualities?
I'd say the space that I tend to spend a lot of time on really is around, speed of execution, right? How quickly does a founder go from having an idea to building a product to launching it and getting feedback and then iterating? And I think that tends to be a pattern that an individual has throughout their life with a lot of different examples that you can dig into. So it's part of the founder framework, but I think it also just leads into better understanding the founder themselves and how they think about and prioritize the problem space.
Yeah, totally. Makes a ton of sense. Let's dig into kind of where you're spending your time, what you like, what you don't like. I know you have lots of opinions, Abby, that's why we get along. You've become, I think, a little bearish on sort of AI productivity tools. What, if anything, would you need to be true for a product in that category or another category that you're not a fan of to clear your bar?
Yeah, I think also just being in San Francisco, you just see a lot of hype. And I think that with this AI buzz, I've seen countless, the amount of probably MarTech vertical application AI to create marketing tools that's going to specifically target this consumer. It's just been endless. And I think that those in general are just relatively small. It just doesn't seem that transformational. It's more focused on how can I improve a pre-existing process, like automizing your ROAS on Instagram, versus how can I actually fundamentally rethink how you need to interact and engage with consumers? How are people going to be buying products in 5 years? I don't think that's going to necessarily be scrolling on social media anymore. I think we're going to enter this new wave. Personally in my life, the first thing I do when I'm trying to buy something new is I go ask Claude. I'm let's start with research. Let's figure out what the different approaches and solutions could be to solving my problem. And then it's probably hit or miss at this point of what product recommendations they actually recommend.
Yeah.
But I think like there's this interesting question of like, well, what does search look like? And I don't see a lot of companies in like this AI category like trying to attack that. They're more just how can we optimize existing systems? And that just ultimately isn't really that interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's probably going to be some billion-dollar businesses there, but I'm just the wrong pre-seed investor for that.
For sure. Do you think, okay, fine. If we're leaning out of kind of the companies for which there are maybe many examples, and like I think the common refrain is sort of like distribution is the advantage. Are you generally looking to invest in companies where there's more of maybe a product or technical moat versus folks who are more oriented toward like brand and go to market as the differentiator?
Yeah, I mean, I think like product stickiness is a major question. And so I like to really lean into like, I like to say that I invest in companies solving real problems. Like, give me a hard, sticky, unsexy segment that maybe hasn't seen large adoption of tech. So that can be everything from like wastewater management. I mean, how many people are looking at that category?
Yeah.
Not a ton. Versus just like these sexy, scaling AI for marketing.
Yeah, makes sense. What about in like consumer? Because you mentioned sort of AI search. I every now and then wish there was an app that would help me find the right t-shirt for the right evening that I'm going out or whatever that I can buy. And I've certainly seen some folks out there trying to tackle that, but no one that's like the default option yet. But even beyond that, where in consumer are you most interested?
I think in consumer, just as a category, the areas that I'm the most interested in are really around like, how do you get more personalized to me? Like, there's so much data that exists about my taste and preference. And I feel like even today, like, if I wanted to ask that generic question, like, nobody's really capturing me. And so is that a digital twin? Maybe. Like, what does that exactly look like? I don't know. But I think that there is this demand from consumers for this hyper personalized and customized tailoring of like what products or things should I try and use. And that kind of goes across the board from everything of like, how am I ordering my groceries? What meals am I cooking? What outfits am I wearing? What appointments do I need to schedule? I think as we kind of, software was this great tool that helped empower individuals to taking action more. And we're entering an era of technology where the technology can actually take the action for you with agents. And so I'm really thinking through like, okay, how do like agents feed into the everyday life?
Yeah.
There's different random tasks that I can think of in my everyday life. Like, I'm still going into my Google Home to edit and adjust the time that my lights need to go on and off based off of, what time the sun goes down. Why am I still doing that? Like, there's these kind of weird edge cases that I'm like, all the data exists across my Gmail, my social media profiles, my phone, my contacts, but nobody has really come up with a great way of like, how do you use it to benefit the consumer?
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's maybe a problem of like centralizing that data. I often wonder, and I would love to hear your opinion, if you think that sort of the solution to that hyper-personalization is something that is much more like all-in-one around your lifestyle, or if it's sort of like use case specific, but then very, high fidelity to each use case.
Well, and I think the question becomes like, does a major player like a foundational model or a Google or a Meta take this on, or is this a new company? And I think like the question of integration becomes the barrier, right? Like, and some of it is like time will tell. Like, we'll see how Apple decides to play with integration. Historically, like, they've been a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But they hold a tremendous amount of this data, and yet they've been massively lagging on any kind of AI or personalization, like Siri being a prime example of like just an epic failure.
Yep.
Right? People don't use it. It doesn't work in the way that they need it to, but it could.
Yeah.
So I think that is a really interesting category that I'm definitely paying a lot of attention to, as well as just tools in consumer that empower the consumer to drive their own decisions. Like healthcare, I'm a big fan of. The healthcare system has failed us. How do you operate in a manner at which it allows you as the patient and the consumer to own and manage and drive the actions, right? You might change companies, which changes your insurance. You might change providers, because who has a consistent provider that's under the age of 30 without a chronic condition? Like, not me. I still go to urgent care down the street for most of my needs. But like, I don't own my patient data. My patient data exists across a number of different systems, and that seems ridiculous to me.
Definitely. What are some other spaces? You mentioned unsexy industries, which has actually been a very common phrase I've been hearing in the last couple of podcasts that we've recorded. I think you've been spending a lot of time, obviously in defense, given your GP's background in manufacturing and supply chain. What are you kind of looking for in those, hard categories?
I think the unique thing about Outlander is we're consistently looking for the same thing regardless of the category or vertical we're investing in. We're not a hyper thesis driven firm. Like, we don't say like we're looking, we don't go do a bunch of research and say we're looking for a low cost drone because we think that there's this big opportunity with, an organization like the Army committing to buying 1 million drones a year. We're still benchmarking to the founder framework. It's still, are we meeting people who meet this set of criteria that we believe it takes to build a multi-billion-dollar company? Now, with every fund, we definitely have different sector thesis focuses. Like, defense was a big one for Fund 3, hence where our current portfolio sits, just given our GP's background and the things that we were seeing moving on a geopolitical standpoint. And so we spent a lot of time this last fund cycle really drilling down into the defense categories. As we're looking ahead we're starting to think about our next fund and what our next kind of set of themes will be. And something that we just spent a lot of time talking about at our all hands last week is what happens when economic levels increase because productivity and AI has replaced a lot of people. And you have this group of highly educated, highly intelligent knowledge workers who now kind of don't have a job. What does that lead to? And, a thing that we were kicking around with was really like, okay, well, do those people start businesses? Do they start startups? Do they start services businesses? Like, what are the offerings that will continue to need humans in the loop for? And what does the support of a transition maybe away from mass conglomerates and into more small mom and pop style, small, medium-sized businesses, what does that look like? And what are the tools that you would need to kind of support a transition to that?
Yeah. It certainly feels like culturally we're moving in that direction already. And I'm sure there's a whole conversation we could have around, I think, what I call kind of the founder influencer archetype that seems to be coming up more often with younger founders who I think are probably asking themselves the same question, right? Which is like, if consulting and banking and being a lawyer or any of these like historically white collar professions are AI'd away, do I become an entrepreneur? What does life kind of look like? It's very interesting. I think we can get into maybe the like espresso round now, where I ask some rapid fire questions. When we hear
Do I get an espresso for this round? A latte. I can do a latte.
We'll do a latte round.
Okay, I'll do a latte round.
I would join you, but I'm wildly over caffeinated.
You're wildly over. Classic. What time is it? 2 p.m.?
Yeah. Only another one in a couple hours.
Espresso round.
What is one view that you hold about the market that most investors would disagree with?
Consumer is the way.
Nice. What's one sort of thesis or area where you had high conviction that you've completely rethought in the last year?
I was really bullish on fusion and fission models and like nuclear energy power creation. I think after a big deep dive into it, I'm way more bullish now on the picks and shovels of how do you support an energy industry that's headed towards more nuclear power versus actually building the nuclear power plants.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to double click on that real quick. Do you think fission is the future, or do you think fusion is the future?
I think I don't know. I'm not a nuclear physicist.
Sure.
I have no idea, but I do think the benchmark data, the last time I looked, so fact check me on all of this, but the price per kilowatt that they were able to produce in Korea was close to $2,200. The price in the US that it costs is closer to $6,000. And so whatever approach to nuclear we decide as a country, I think we have built every nuclear facility here as a bespoke N of 1. You can't scale that.
Yeah.
So I think whatever we decide, we need to figure out what the standard in the US should be and duplicate.
Yep.
And really focus on driving the cost down.
What's a founder red flag that's actually a green flag to you?
A founder red flag that I love is when you argue with me. too many founders. Like sometimes, and this is a test sometimes, ding, 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 founders, every conversation you have with an investor is kind of a test to some degree before you get that check, even sometimes after. Sometimes I'll throw something out just to see if a founder has high conviction on their idea and like kind of say something probably dumb or something just like totally contradictory to what they've been focused on, just to challenge them and see if they have a lot of belief and conviction in the research that they've done.
Yeah.
And so I think some investors get frustrated when a founder disagrees with them on a call or tells them that they think that they're wrong. Because the fact of the matter is I should be wrong on most of the things. I'm not spending 24/7 thinking about the product or sector that you're focused on.
Yeah.
You should know more than I do about it.
Definitely. Do you think it's, gonna double click on that too, do you think it's generally acceptable or good for a founder to occasionally either admit that they don't know something or... Cool.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I always look for in a founder is like, are you trying to close the gap between what you don't know and what you do?
Makes sense. Who is a company, founder, sector that you're fascinated by at the moment? And you can't say defense because we already talked about that a lot.
Okay, fair. I mean, I'm really bullish on healthcare.
Cool.
I really want to do more in healthcare in this upcoming year, especially as I think about, we have this big generation of baby boomers who are entering that kind of final phase of life, like that final third. And, I've been just going through it with my own grandparents and family members recently and just seeing how archaic that system is and the way that the infrastructure is set up to support it. And like for the first time ever, we have a decently wealthy demographic who is semi-tech savvy. They know how to text. They know how to use some of these tools. They're entering a later stage of life that they're kind of not prepared for. And how have we as a society and like through technology, how can we better support that? So that can be everything from care robots, more prevention, more proactive things that, most of us don't live around our parents. And so as they enter these final years, like how do we kind of keep better check on when and how we should engage with them and really think about that transition of life.
Have you made any recent investments in consumer healthcare?
We haven't, but we've been looking.
Cool. We'll have to help you look even more. What do founders consistently get wrong about what VCs actually do?
I think founders tend to forget that, as investors, we offer a service to our LPs. The service is our ability to pick really successful companies and founders. But I think founders also forget that we run a business too. Like there's a whole other side of the business of venture capital. And there's a lot of similarities that it has to a startup. You have to really think through like deal flow when you're sourcing. And we also fundraise. I mean, I don't feel like founders ask us nearly enough about the fundraising process. I'm like, we run the exact same process you run. There's just a different profile of customer that we're talking to.
Yep.
And so I think founders sometimes they're just like, VCs are just rich people who are spending other people's money. And like, that's true for some of the funds, but that's not true for all of the funds. I mean, we at Outlander, we have real institutional LPs. Like we are investing money on behalf of Texas Permanent School Fund and the state of New Mexico, right? Like we take that very seriously. And, the reason that we negotiate so hard, the reason that we invest with such high conviction at such an early stage where not a lot of people are focusing on is because we need to outperform for those groups.
Yeah, that is the whole job.
That's the whole job.
I'm going to come back one last time to
Risks.
Underpriced risk. What is the most underpriced risk in venture right now?
I don't think founders are putting themselves out there enough.
Ooh.
That's my spicy,
that is a spicy take.
Hot take right now. I think it's gotten really easy to sit behind a computer and say that you're a founder. And I don't think I've seen founders show up in person as much.
Interesting. Why do you think that is more the case now than before?
I mean, I think like founders are more distributed than ever before. But I think I've been investing in San Francisco for the last 7 years. The founder events that I go to now look very different than they did a few years ago.
How do they look different?
I think, like, for one, they're definitely more diverse, more specialized, but I think they're also a lot more fragmented. I think we have kind of segmented out into niches upon niches upon niches. And we're missing a lot of the things that, like, when I first got into venture that made it amazing is, like, literally everyone solving, trying to do one thing was in one room together.
Yep.
But now it's really fragmented into all these vertical applications.
Yep. Super interesting. I wonder if we'll see like a reversal of that at any point.
I hope so. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love going to a Women in VC event. I mean, I'm hosting one later today. But I have had to be really intentional about like making sure that those aren't the only rooms that I'm in, because I feel like it can get easy to just be in a slightly more of an echo chamber, just given how explosive the landscape has gotten in venture, both on the investor and founder side.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining our little echo chamber today. Really enjoyed having you on, Abby.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.